Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Winecast. So, this is Winecast number 42, and in honor of that auspicious number, I thought I should do something deep. Like on the meaning of life or something like that. But then again, what do I know about the meaning of life, so maybe I should try something a little easier to manage. What I do know is that life's a lot more pleasant if you're drinking the grape, and it's more pleasant still if you're eating something that complements what you're drinking. So, in the spirit of enjoying life a little more, if not necessarily understanding it any better, here are 7 or so tips that should help the vino in your glass and the food on your plate go together in better harmony. First, let's start with the starters. If you've got a bunch of things to choose from, say at a cocktail party and you don't want any cocktails, a tapas party, or just some hors d'oeuvres and appetizers before the main meal, and you need something that goes with just about everything, reach for a rosé. Rosés work for a variety of foods because even though they aren't blends of red and white wines, they're working a little bit of the red thing and a little bit of the white thing, and in fact, they've got some unique characteristics all their own that make them phenomenally versatile when pairing. I know that some people think it's a thing that you're not supposed to drink rosés after summer is over, but the whole idea of a rosé season is actually pretty tired, and you should feel free to grab a pink any time during the year. And if someone tells you that their tapas party is scheduled for January and starts the whole big red wines for winter thing, unless they're living in a small unheated cottage in the English countryside, just have them turn the furnace up a notch or two. Really, that's all it takes. Second, when you're dealing with something acidic, say a salad dressing with a vinaigrette or a red pasta sauce, make sure that whatever you choose to pair with it has some good acid. Acidic wines, red or white, are great food wines in general because of their ability to refresh and clear your palate. But when the dish is carrying some major tartness, they're a must-go-to because a wine with lower acid will get lost in the high acid of the dish. Acidity will vary from wine to wine, even within the same region and varietal. But a few grapes and styles that usually deliver the goods are Barbera, Sangiovese, Beaujolais, and Cab Franc-driven Loire Valley wines like Chinon for reds, and Riesling, Albarino, Chenin Blanc, and cool climate Chardonnays that haven't gone through much malolactic fermentation, like Chablis, for whites. Third, from match made in heaven, if you've got some fried and salted foods on the menu, go for something sparkling. Sparkling wines tend to be acidic, and acidic wines in general are a plus when pairing with fried eats because they can lighten some of the heaviness that foods will get from frying and cut through all of that fatty goodness. But the bubbles in a sparkler bring an extra level of palate clearing to the table and really stand up to the salt that's usually shaken on a fried piece of something and that's otherwise pretty hard on wines. Don't believe me? Well, cue up your favorite movie, grab a bag of potato chips, and pop the cork on a sparkler, and the proof will be in the noshing. You can thank me in the comments. Well, hello, and welcome to the middle of the cast. Let me take a break from my 7 tips and offer you a bonus. It won't be long once you start talking about wine and food pairing before someone says, "What grows together goes together," and everyone else in the room nods solemnly in agreement. This is supposed to mean that when in doubt for a pairing, just pair the dish with a wine from the same country. So Italian wines go with Italian fare, French with French, Spanish with Spanish. You get the idea. You get bonus points if you pair food with wine from the same region. So Chèvre goat cheese with Sancerre, paella with Catalan wines, Tuscan pork loin with Chianti, and so on. So does this actually work? Yeah, it does, and it's actually remarkable how well it works. But just a caveat. It's not foolproof, and it works better for Old World wines than for New World wines. The reason it's not foolproof is that most wine regions have a lot of wines and a lot of foods to choose from, so it's still a good idea to keep the tips I'm offering you in mind and not just pair a ragu bolognese with the first Italian wine you saw on the shelf. But starting with the Italian aisle would be a good way to narrow the field of possible wines if you're feeling a little overwhelmed about pairing. The reason it works best for Old World regions is the reason that it works at all. Wine has been grown in Europe and parts of West Asia for millennia, and the local wine culture in those places has evolved in tandem with the local food culture, giving some of those regions thousands of years to sort out what works well together and not, and then to show the bad options in both food and wine the door. New World wine regions haven't had that much time to sort things out, so it's a little more hit and miss. Now, back to the cast. Fourth, if a rich, fatty, dark protein, think a nice, well-marbled steak or some prime rib, but lots of meats will fit the bill, is on the menu, then you'll want a wine with some tannins. Tannins are compounds that can be found in grape skins and seeds, as well as in oak barrels. So red wines, since they get their color from extended contact with grape skins, and since they tend to be aged in oak more than white, will be your go-to wines here. Tannins bring a mouth-drying astringency to the party that helps to balance out and clear the heaviness coming from the fat coating your palate, and they also bind with proteins to help tame some of the meatiness of your roast. This particular complement is a two-way street. If you've got a really tannic wine you want to drink, say a big California or Australian Cab Sauv, a Barolo, or a dense inky Syrah, be sure to put a well-marbled slab of meat on the menu, and the proteins in it will give the tannins in the wine something to do other than dry your mouth out. Fifth, if you've got something really intense and vibrant on the menu, say a protein sauced with a complex and heavily seasoned sauce, or a vegetable dish that's chock full of herbs, or just a menu that's all over the place with big flavors, look for a white that's equally intense and vibrant on both the nose and the palate that'll step right up to your food and get in its face. When thinking about intensity, don't let yourself get boxed in by the conventional wisdom surrounding how the color of your wine should determine the pair. One of the best pairs I ever had was a Basque lamb stew that was made with tomatoes, garlic, paprika, rosemary, and, well, lamb, and a few other heavy-hitting things as well. And it was served with a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc that was seriously large on flavor and aroma, as New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs tend to be. Yep, that was a white wine paired with red meat, and it was great. Likewise, when I have Korean food, one of my favorite cuisines in the entire world, I like to drink a really complex Riesling or a Gewürztraminer that has so much going on in the nose and palate that it stands up to the complexity of the banchan, or small plates of highly seasoned and often pickled food that you're served throughout the meal. This is a good tip to keep in mind when thinking about holiday meals like Christmas and, in the US, Thanksgiving, where lots of intensely flavored and aromatic side dishes tend to be the rule. Sixth, if your dish is on the piquant side, either by a little or a lot, then think about pairing it with a wine that's on the sweet side, either by a little or maybe a little more. A little sweetness will go a long way in balancing heat, and sweetness in a wine tends to mean lower alcohol by volume, which is good because alcohol only intensifies the effect of capsaicin, the compound that gives chilies their heat. Riesling, Chenin Blanc, especially Vouvrays from the Loire Valley, and Gewürztraminer are all whites that are often made off-dry or moderately sweet. But if you end up having to pair a dry white or red with something spicy, either because you couldn't find a sweeter wine or your guests don't do the sweet wine or the white wine thing, then try to choose something that's moderate to low in alcohol. And finally, seventh, if you're still thinking about pairing by the time that dessert rolls around, make sure that whatever you pair it with is at least as sweet or sweeter than the dessert itself. We've covered this before when it came to chocolate, but it's good advice across the board. A wine that's less sweet than the dish it's paired with is going to come off tasting tart and maybe a little bit bitter. This tip doesn't just apply to desserts, and you should keep it in mind when pairing with entrees that are on the sweet side too, like barbecue or meatloaf in a sweet tomato-based sauce. If a wine is very fruit-forward, that fruitiness can be experienced as sweetness, even though the wine is dry. So a big fruit-driven red like a Zinfandel, or a light fruity red with a touch of sweetness like a Lambrusco, can be just the trick for main dishes like this. Thanks for joining me for another Winecast. If it didn't answer any of your existential questions, I hope it left you feeling a little more confident about pairing food and wine, because life's always a little nicer when those two aren't at odds. If this cast was enjoyable and helpful to you, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm your host, the Unknown Winecaster, and I'm out. Enjoy the grape, but always enjoy it responsibly.